Ottawa. What's going on? I'm talking to Ottawa here today because when it comes to the Sens and a good chunk of their fan base, it's very apparent that a lot of y'all seem to be turning on one of the guys that we all thought was going to be a stud. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I know every intricate little detail as to how everything's been going with the Senators, which is why I'm making this video. I wanted to go out there and ask the Ottawa Senators fans what's been going on, because it seems like a lot of y'all are sharing this unexpected opinion about Ottawa Senators defenseman Jakob Chychrun. Now, before we dive into the information here, let's go over the profile. We always have to do this. Chychrun is 26 years old, 6'2", 209, left-handed guy, signed till the end of next season, making $4.6 million a year. This contract was seen by a lot of people as a really big bargain back when it was signed with the Arizona Coyotes before the start of the current decade. Chychrun, in his time with the Arizona Coyotes, had his best season, getting 41 points in 56 games. He was a physical guy, a pretty big guy, and he was producing points. And he was on the trade market for years up until he got traded to the Ottawa Senators last year. Now, you can say what you want about the quality of these teams. Arizona, were they good or were they bad? They made the playoffs once with Chychrun on their team. Meanwhile, the Ottawa Senators haven't really had anything to write home about the past few years. This season, though, was Jakob Chychrun's first full year with the Ottawa Senators, and he's got 38 points in 75 games. 13 goals, he's on pace for 41 total points, and he actually is a minus 27 at the moment, which isn't great, but, you know, as we've said, the Sens aren't really all too good. But the thing is, and I'm gonna say this is where my uneducation comes in, I'm not gonna pretend like I've been watching as many Ottawa Senators games as I could have this year. But, on paper, these numbers look pretty okay. 40-point defenseman making $4.6 million who scores 10 to 15 goals a year, that's a pretty reasonable player. But, when it comes to a lot of the Ottawa Senators fan discourse that I'm seeing, it's apparent that maybe his on-ice performance is a lot more disappointing compared to what the numbers might indicate. This is a post made by Lonely Guy on the Ottawa Senators sub from earlier this morning. If Jakob Chychrun wants $7 million plus, we need to move on from him. He's one of the softest players I've ever seen. He makes Thomas Chabot look like Scott Stevens. Despite being built like a brick house, he shows very little emotion in frustrating situations, and he doesn't stick up for his teammates. He's poor defensively according to metrics and the eye test, a poor puck mover, although he's got a great shot. And you might be wondering, wait a minute, this guy has a Boston Bruins flair, he's posting in the Ottawa Senators sub bashing their guy. What's the Sens fan base response to this? Well, 75% of people are upvoting it, and they're pretty much saying the same thing. Remember all the crazies who said they would rather pay Chychrun $8 million than Chabot? That was a weird couple of months here in this subreddit. And this is how things have gotten, right? I mean, Jakob Chychrun's contract expires next year. There are conversations already about extending him in this season's offseason, but based off of the point production, based off of the profile, based off of the fact that Chychrun's 26 years old, he could realistically get something in the $7+ million range, and it wouldn't be seen as that bad. If you think he's looking for anything less, I hate to break it to you. Yeah, people need to realize that he is a pending UFA, and he holds all the cards. But despite that, you've got Senators fans labeling their projected Chychrun value at $5 million top. He's not worth more than $6 million even. There's been a lot of disappointment around the play of Jakob Chychrun. And GELC10 goes out there and says, I think a part of it is he probably knows his time in Ottawa is done, so he isn't trying as hard as he should. Honestly, Chabot, to me, has worked on his shot and looks good, and he has looked so much better under Jacques Martin, and it's one of the reasons that the coaching staff has separated Chabot and Chychrun. Another commenter says he is a good player, but I cannot for the life of me understand why somebody with a body chiseled from a mountainside isn't tough to play against. Seriously, this guy has all the tools to be the ultimate two-way hero, and yet he's often soft. Anything over $6 million a year should not be considered. Now, there are a lot of interesting ideas to try to justify why this is the case, what's going on with Jakob Chychrun mentally, physically, that holds him back from being the two-way monster that we expected him to be. There's a debate to be made about games played, The fact is, this is the most games that Jakob Chychrun has ever played in a season. I mean, even going back to his teenage years, he's never played more than 70 games on a season, and now he's up there. Furthermore, you could say, okay, maybe it does have to do with motivation. The team isn't that great. He's not getting into the fight for his teammates. He's not standing up for them. He's a pretty ripped dude, but he doesn't play physically. Maybe it is because he doesn't feel mentally that he is with this team, even though it is his hometown squad and everybody was talking about how it was great for Chychrun to return to the Ottawa Senators and do all this stuff. Chychrun himself maybe has noticed it. The fans have definitely noticed it. And what I wanted to do was take a look at some other conversations on different parts of the internet. Maybe it's just a Reddit thing. Maybe the folks on the Ottawa Senators sub are the minority. There's a lot of people going out there saying they're disappointed in Chychrun, but what does the rest of the cyber world say? Uncensored went out there and tweeted this: Jakob Chychrun's fall off has to be studied. He seemed like a stud based on the numbers and reports out of Arizona. I can't say I'd seen him play much over there, but he was sure pumped to be like he was a clear number 2 top D. Disappointing. I agree. I'm also pretty surprised to see how he barely throws the body around. All around, his physicality is lacking. And this seems to be a very common trend that is talked about in regards to Ottawa Senators circles, that, hey, Jakob Chychrun does not hit. He does not play physically. He is not difficult to play against. It is relatively easier to get by him than you may expect when you acknowledge that he was this two-way force back during his time with the Arizona Coyotes. And so now, when you think about what the Ottawa Senators have tried to do with this guy, they tried trading him away at the deadline. There wasn't anything that went through. Who knows what the offers could have been like? Was it more of a supply or a demand thing? Was it the other teams that really didn't want Jakob Chychrun? Or was it that the Ottawa Senators wanted more than what they were offered by other teams? It's a very small difference, but I do think it makes an impact here, especially when you acknowledge that Chychrun was moved for a package that a lot of people in the first place weren't really all too satisfied with. Not from the perspective of the Sens, but from the perspective of the Arizona Coyotes. The fact is, the Coyotes got the 12th overall pick in 2023, as well as 2 seconds. That is totally not the same price that we had talked about this entire saga when Chychrun was available in the trade block in the first place. Everybody was saying, okay, it's going to be a roster player, a young prospect, and a first-round pick. Instead, it was a first-round pick in 2 seconds. Not the same. A lot less, actually. So, with this year's Jakob Chychrun in mind, the fact that he has produced roughly the same amount of points, the fact that he is a year older, and the fact that his play in Ottawa has been fairly disappointing compared to what we thought he'd be able to do, has his value and stock tanked even further now. The court of public opinion does not have a good light on Jakob Chychrun. Ottawa Senators fans have been talking a lot of smack lately. They've been disappointed, and rightfully so. So I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as to where this entire Jakob Chychrun thing goes. Does he re-sign for 2025, 2026, and beyond? Or will the Ottawa Senators make a trade before that even happens? Will they try everything in their power to unload Jakob Chychrun, who has a modified no-trade clause right now, by the way, sometime during this offseason, because the experiment just hasn't worked? To end off this video, let's go over onto a tweet made by Derek Lee. Derek is a buddy of mine, does some pretty good work on the Twitters over here. Tyler Kleven is ready for a full-time third-pairing role next season. I can see a pretty significant overhaul to the construction of this defensive group next year. Chabot, Chychrun, and Brannstrom could all be relocated this summer. And then a bunch of replies talk about whether or not Tyler Kleven is ready. There are some others talking about Chychrun and whether or not he does find himself on another team, but I'll pose the same question out to y'all in the comments section below. Have you been disappointed with the way Jakob Chychrun has been playing, and is it more of a collective thing? Like, is this the majority of how Ottawa Senators fans feel? Because based off of what I'm seeing, it seems like it is. Ottawa's turning on this guy. But I'm wondering if it's really just my ineptitude at being able to look at social media conversations properly, or if this is really just how it's been. So, thoughts in the comment section below about Jakob Chychrun. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.